Alright, so back course, we're talking FF7, we're talking Rebirth, and today I want to talk about summons. Mostly Phoenix in this video, but we might talk about some other summons as well. But obviously with the recent trailer we got for FF7 Rebirth, we got a little bit of like Phoenix gameplay, but also with like the blog post I put out the same day, we got like a description of what Phoenix does. Oddly enough, coming out of this like Phoenix information that we do have, I've seen it speculated on how we're going to obtain Phoenix. And some people seem to think that it's going to be similar to the OG FF7, which we got Phoenix from Fort Condor, right? We get it at the point in the story when we go there for the story, because Fort Condor is obviously an optional location. But we do go there at one point because we need to get a huge materia, and we got to fight, blah, blah, blah. We get the Phoenix materia at the top of the tower. Some people seem to think that we're going to get Phoenix in a similar fashion at the location of Fort Condor, which as of right now, I don't recall if we know if Fort Condor exists in the game. I know that with like the under Junon kind of gameplay that we have, there's like an island in the distance that has like a building on it or a tower on it or something. And I think it's speculated that's Fort Condor, but I don't know that we have like full-on confirmation of that. You guys can let me know in the comments. Also, whether or not that location is actually Fort Condor, it kind of doesn't matter because so far with the remake project, we have a precedent set that it's kind of irrelevant where you obtain the summon materials in the original FF7 because we got a bunch of summon materials with remake and the remake DLC and like pre-orders and things like that. That had nothing to do with the OG FF7, right? We have like Bahamut. Bahamut's like a Temple of the Ancients summon materia in OG FF7, and we have that in literally the first game. I mean, even with the most recent trailer, we got our first reveal of Bahamut Arisen, which is obviously a modern interpretation of Neo Bahamut. Neo Bahamut is obtained in the Roland Maze, right? Which is, you know, a couple hours, several hours into Disc 2, right? So it's pretty clear that we're not going to be, you know, grabbing materia at the same locations as we did in the original FF7, at least for the most part. Unless the Bahamut Arisen is also a tease that we are going to go to the North Crater prior to going to the Forgotten Capital, which is already a theory, but I just doubt that that's going to happen. And as we go through the video, we'll talk about why it might be there or could be there, but we also don't even know, even if Fort Condor is a location in the remake project, we don't even know that we're going to go there in Rebirth, right? Especially if it's like an island out in the ocean. Like, we don't know how much of the ocean will be traversable, either with a chocobo, with the ability to kind of swim in the game, but also with like the tiny bronco. We just don't even know what locations we can visit with all that, right? So even if there is an island with Fort Condor, we might not go to it in this game, but we're still getting the Phoenix materia in this game. So the whole premise of this obviously is based on the original FF7, and when it comes to obtaining the Phoenix materia in the original Final Fantasy VII, that's not until Disc 2, right? And we know that Rebirth is going up to Forgotten Capital, right? Calm to Forgotten Capital. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to visit locations that potentially are only on Disc 2 or moments that are only on Disc 2. They might do something. We know we're doing some shit out of order, right? So who knows exactly what's going on there. But if we're just basing off the story that is in the original FF7, we don't go to Fort Condor and obtain the Phoenix materia until post-Forgotten Capital. We're in the huge materia questline, obviously, so they'd have to give us something brand new, which they probably will anyways. If Fort Condor is a location that can be visited in this game, they're going to have to give it something else besides huge materia, because that's not until Meteor summoned and all that other shit, right? That's when we start doing the huge materia shit. So I don't know what story they'd give you there, but they'd also have to give you a way to... I mean, we got the Phoenix materia kind of from the gigantic Condor on top, right? But they don't have to necessarily do that. They could give you the Phoenix materia just as a reward for helping them, or whatever the fuck, or it's just like a random item you find on the Fort Condor Island. There's a lot of ways it could go, obviously, but it's actually really cool about OG FF7 is that, like, you get the Phoenix materia from Fort Condor, but you can kind of miss it, technically, because if, like, you fail that fight for some reason, you don't get it. Also, even if you win the fight and the materia is there on the ground, you don't have to pick it up. But what's really cool about this game is that there's a lot of missable items that you can just dig up at, like, the Bone Village, right? It's really cool. That's a way to get Phoenix materia if you just happen to miss it somehow. Speaking of OG FF7 and the story elements, that's why I think it's a possibility that you could get it here, assuming that we do visit Fort Condor in this game, because it is one of kind of many summon materials in OG FF7 that are kind of attached to the story. Some of them you're just straight up given. I think Priscilla like just forcefully gives you the Shiva materia, but then like you have the Ifrit materia on like the cargo ship, like Genova drops it, but you don't have to pick it up. I mean, obviously you're going to, but you don't have to. Then same thing, we mentioned Bahamut materia. You see that in the Temple of the Ancients, but you don't have to pick it up. But it's still technically attached to the story, right? It's a story element where you can find that materia. And same thing with the Phoenix materia, right? If you defend the Fort Condor or whatever, like the materia's there, you're going to grab it anyways. So because it is kind of attached to the story, I could see them maybe want to like incorporate Phoenix materia into that potentially. Especially because the location itself is obviously named after the gigantic bird on top that's like incubating its egg, right? And once the egg hatches and whatever, that's when you get the Phoenix materia. So I could see them wanting to do that still, but I just don't... I'm not 100%. Only because we don't have that precedent set yet. This is the game that could do that, right? Like, if we get Phoenix materia at Fort Condor in this game, and maybe we get, like, Titan materia in or around Gungaga, then it's like, okay, now we can start kind of taking the summon materials that we don't have yet, and kind of placing them around the map of where we might get them. Speaking of that too, I remember us looking at an interview with Hamaguchi back in October where he talked about the summons be a little more important in this game. You can like level them up or whatever, kind of progress them a bit by doing like mini games, side quests or whatever. But also that there's locations around the game, around the world where like summons or like a summon was once revered or something like that. So it kind of adds an importance to them. It's not necessarily making them a part of the story, just kind of incorporating them into the game more. And that obviously sounds like Fort Condor potentially. That'd be a location where they obviously revered the Phoenix if it existed in real life. But actually, just not saying that, looking at the list of summons from the original FF7, there's not a lot left after this game, because we have almost all of them. There's only 4 summons we've yet to see when it comes to the remake project, and that's the bottom 4 if you're looking at them in kind of like obtainable order, and that's Hades, Bahamut Zero, Typhoon, and Knights of Round, or Knights of the Round. Kind of interesting, because going into the third game, what does that mean for summons? And we're also getting like a brand new summon within Rebirth. We've yet to see that. I don't know what that's going to be. We've speculated on that in the past. But as of right now, there's only 4 summons going into the third, full standalone game, and it makes you wonder what they're going to do there. Because there's a little bit of a theory of like maybe breaking up Knights of the Round or something into like multiple pieces, and you got to kind of get them all together to fight like the weapons and stuff, which I think is like kind of a decent idea right now, only because there's not a lot of summons left. Actually, since we're doing a video about summons and I'm talking about this, thinking about this shit, it just now clicked that if you have like a save file for remake / integrate / intermission, whatever, you get like Leviathan Rama, right? Carried over. What does that mean for the other summons that we got in remake? Like, where's Ifrit and like Choco, like Fat Chocobo and Chocobo Moogle and Shiva and stuff like that? Are those just going to be default in the game? We're going to have those already, or do we have to like unlock those again as we're going through Rebirth? Or what's going on with those summons? We have not heard anything about that. That just now like hit my mind. I don't know why I just not thought of that, and I don't think I've seen anybody mention this either. Otherwise, we probably would have talked about it in the past. But that's kind of weird, right? We have like a nice handful of summons coming out of remake, like. Where are those at? Especially Bahamut. Bahamut's obviously like an iconic summon. It's one like the strongest summon in a remake, obviously. Where's that at? Obviously, we got to get a little bit of tinfoil hat territory, a little bit of theorizing speculation here. But a lot of the summons that we got in remake that we don't see yet in Rebirth are upcoming in this game, right? A lot of this, every summon that we got for one in remake obviously didn't even exist in Midgar in the original FF7. But like, we have Chocobo Mog, which we got from like the Chocobo Ranch in the OG FF7. I don't know if we're gonna get that there this time, but we get like Shiva and Under Junon from Priscilla. We get Ifrit on the cargo ship. We get Bahamut in Temple of the Ancients, stuff like that, right? And those are all upcoming locations that are in Rebirth. I wonder if we're going to have to re-earn them again in that way, or if we just get them from Chadley again or something like that. But I wonder if that doesn't like kind of lean into like the kind of reset coming out of Singularity while we don't have our shit. We kind of forget that we had them or something along those lines. And I didn't necessarily, they wouldn't be canon that we had them anyways, other than the Ifrit material, because that was given to us by Jesse. And that's the only one, right? Like, it's the only one you get in the story when it comes to remake. So it's kind of interesting, just something to think about. Like, I wonder if we're going to have to kind of re-earn them the same way that we did in the original FF7, maybe. On the same topic of discussion here, but we're not talking about summons, but our characters' weapons that we got in remake, right? Because obviously with Rebirth, we have our default weapons, like the Buster Sword and stuff, but like, do we just re-buy those, re-earn those? Do we find them in the world? Do we just have them all by default? Like, what's going on with that, right? Like, what the fuck? There's some unanswered questions we need when it comes to Rebirth. I'll back really quickly to Phoenix materia itself before we wrap the video up here, but when it comes to like the FF7 compilation, you can also obtain the Phoenix materia in Crisis Core. It had nothing to do with Fort Condor, right? You literally got it in Nibelheim, just like talking to a kid, right? So you just never know what they're going to do. And whether or not that matters or not when it comes to Rebirth or the remake project itself, I guess, remains to be seen. But I just want to point out that, like, who knows where we might get the Phoenix materia this time. Of course, pass off to you guys. So we have the Phoenix materia confirmed for Rebirth, obviously. Do you think we're going to get that at Fort Condor or somewhere else? Because we have some other summons I didn't talk about in this video. We have Alexander in this game, but, I mean, obviously, as far as we're aware, we're not going to Great Glacier in this game. So we're attaining that by other means. We have Odin, but we are going to go to Nibelheim in this game. But we do see Odin fighting the Midgar Zalem. So what does that mean? Do we obtain Odin a lot earlier in this game? Or is that like somebody backtracking back to the swamp and fighting the Midgar Zalem? Does that also confirm that the Midgar Zalem is something you can repeatedly fight? I don't know what's going on here. You tell me. Anyways, that's the video, my dude. Subscribe to if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter at @DavidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more. And nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain or leave it like Cobain.